All right, we are here on the floor of NAMM 2007 in sunny Anaheim, California. It's Rob Warmowski for Gearwire, and I'm standing next to Martin Atkins of Killing Joke, Pigface, Public Image Limited Ministry, etc., etc. We're in front of the Presonus booth, and Martin just got back from China with us doing a special project, sort of a cultural collection maybe, or collecting the culture of Beijing rock bands. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you found out in Beijing, Martin?
I think it's more of a cultural collision.
Ooh.
And first of all, I have to stop you. Sunny California, it's snowing in Malibu.
I didn't know that. It's not snowing at NAMM, so I don't know what the hell's going on.
I went to China to, I don't know why I went. I was lucky enough to find a club in Beijing called D22, just some guys from New York. They set up a bunch of bands for me to see and record, and I recorded like 20 bands in 5 days live through a FirePod to Logic Express on my laptop. But at the same time, got pulled into the scene there, extended my stay, booked time in a pop studio, brought a bunch of bands into the studio, and then decided to try and reconnect with my musical soul, and booked some time with some traditional drummers, like the master drummers. And so I'm waiting for these drummers to come into the studio, and I think my interpreter wasn't the best. And 3 young girls show up, it's like a string section, with their manager. And okay, fantastic, let's make a Pigface album. And over the next 6 days, we brought in scratch DJs, guzheng players, erhu, pipa, flute, mandolin, Tibetan singers, freestyle rappers, and it was just fantastic.
Sounds insane. Where are you at with that project? Is it in mixing now?
We're mixing the Pigface album. We're mixing the bands we recorded in China. I'm producing a couple of them. We already did a special with NPR Radio. They came down to the studio, and we just put out a red vinyl 7-inch. Hold on a second. Red vinyl 7-inch in 40 different propaganda posters. It's pretty cool.
I feel a greater kinship with the chairman right now, just from looking at one of these.
Right, and so it turns out that the trip was kind of about me reconnecting with the things that I do, which is make music, but combine things and then turn them into other things, and that felt great. It's a 40-page section of the new book. It just rekindled a bunch of things for me.
We're going to talk about that new book in just a second, but I do want to get in a couple questions about the scene in Beijing. When you did the initial recordings in that studio, can you tell me a little bit about what kind of facility were you in, and how are they equipped? I mean, what were the big surprises?
Well, the biggest surprise wasn't the studio. It was, there might be 15 Starbucks in Beijing, right? I mean, and on the one hand, I'm thinking, okay, that dilutes my China experience. But on the other hand, it upped my caffeine intake, and it made me, all I was worried about was my musical experience. There's Subway, 7-Eleven, McDonald's, a surprise. That was surprising. The atmosphere was surprising. Not the political or the cultural atmosphere, the atmosphere. I'm still pulling things out of my nose. I mean, honestly, it's my kid's favorite picture is this. I blew my nose on a napkin, and it's like, oh my God. The government, they're going to close down all of the industry for 2 or 3 weeks before the Olympics so that people can breathe.
And when are you going to eBay off the napkin?
I hadn't thought of that until this moment. But as far as the studio is concerned, at the club, at the venue, they told me that their microphones were poor. So I took some microphones from Audix over there.
What kind of Audix mics did you bring?
You know what? I have no idea.
That's okay.
I called the Clip at Audix, and I said, here's the thing, can you recommend some microphones? He said, well, you've got to take their bass drum mic is awesome. He says, you've got to take that. And then he gave me a couple of pretty universal vocal mics and some good instrument mics. Gave me a good coverage. And I took my Mac laptop and a PreSonus FirePod, and with Logic Express, boom! In the studio itself, it was a nice large facility that a pop producer was using, kind enough to give me 6 days of time, $350 a day, which was okay, I guess. We rented a drum kit, rented some amplifiers, and the drum kit didn't come with any cymbals. And the studio guy said, well, drummers usually bring their own cymbals. I'm like, what? Fucking Chicago? You know. It was awesome.
I hear a lot of when you hear stories about China. Sometimes you'll, especially actually when you hear stories when you get away from the industrialized West. You hear stories like AC power might be a little dodgy, or certain facilities aren't there. What was your experience with what was your expectation with just plugging in a Chinese outlet? I mean, is that a good experience, or is it a gamble?
No, it was fine in Beijing. I mean, when you go from England to America, English plugs are massive, three-pronged, because the voltage is 240. You come to America, it's like, what is this flimsy death trap of a, you know? China was kind of on a par with America or a very bad 60s hotel in terms of wiring. And I didn't have any experience of problems. I took a Furman regulator thing, so that was okay. You know.
We're going to wrap it up here, but one last thing I wanted to ask, Martin, is there what are your impressions of the chaos that is NAMM?
Here's my impression of NAMM. The big learning experience at NAMM is open a Starbucks. Do whatever you can to open a Starbucks. There have been 80 people in line. There's the guy from Bloodhound Gang. Okay. There have been 80 people in line at Starbucks for 4 days. I don't even want to do the math.
All right, well, thank you very much, Martin. We appreciate it. This is Rob for Gearwire.com at NAMM with Martin Atkins of Coventry, Chicago, Beijing, and Anaheim.
Thanks, man.